Hi, Erica. Welcome to the show.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so today we're going to be talking a lot about your book, which I love this title. Nobody cares about your career. But before we do, tell the listeners who you are and your background that led you to write this book, because you have a really great career story.
I don't know if it's great, but I'm so excited to be here. I'm currently the CEO of a company called Food 52, which is a company founded by two women in the early mid 2000s. They both worked for the New York Times. They were cookbook writers and chefs, and they built this really neat little company that was designed to connect a community around what they saw happening in home and kitchen and table. And it evolved and it kind of exploded over COVID to really being a very big force within the food and home and lifestyle industry, as well as really curating, incredible products from over around 700 makers in the US. Prior to that, I did something wildly different. I was the CEO of Barstool Sports, and we grew Barstool Sports from, a very, very small blog in Boston. I shouldn't say very, very small, but a small blog in Boston to a media juggernaut. I was there for about a decade. We took the company from about $5 million in revenue to $300 million in revenue. We sold the company twice in 2023, which is when I left to join Food 52. And then prior to that, I had all sorts of jobs in marketing, in advertising, in media, in revenue, in sales, you name it. And I had kind of a meandering career that led up to that point.
I just want to also say to anybody who hasn't been to Food 52 yet, I use it all the time. It's my go-to for like gifts. And anyway, if you guys haven't been on it, you can
It's
thank me
really
later.
beautiful.
Yeah, you're
Yeah,
gonna
it's
get
really
lost and you're
special.
gonna find all this stuff that I'm not a cook and I'm like, oh, I need these things. So
Yeah,
anyway,
that's
love
awesome.
that. And it's funny because I'm not really a sports girly, so I can't say a lot about Barstool Sports other than like I know it was a big deal to sports people, but as a non-sports person, I'm like, I can more relate to Food 52.
That's great.
Yeah. Okay. Wait. So why? Okay, you wrote this book called "Nobody
Oh,
Cares About Your Career,"
yeah.
and I'm very curious. You obviously thought about this title for a while. Is like what's the meaning behind the title? Is it because throughout your career you kind of felt like nobody was looking out for you? Like, tell us the meaning behind it.
Oh, interesting. So, I had originally wanted to call this book You Can Be Yourself and Be Successful. And the publisher was like, that's a terrible idea. You should never call that book. It's too cheesy. But, what I really believe, Nobody Cares About Your Career is one of the chapters in the book. And, one of the things I've been really grateful for in my career is that I have failed a whole bunch. I've taken a bunch of risks. I've made 1,000 mistakes. And I especially started doing this early and mid in my career. If you look at the career change I'm making right now, going from sports and kind of at the top of my game in sports and then moving into lifestyle, it really shows what I believe is really important about work, which is that you can be anything you want to be. You can make incredible change. You can become anything you want if you're willing to put aside your ego and put aside your insecurity and believe that you can get there. And the reason I chose the title, Nobody Cares About Your Career, is that the person who your career is for is you. And you're the person who is supposed to care about your career, not your boss, not your mom, not your coworker, not your uncle, not your boyfriend or your girlfriend or whatever. And I think a lot of times people are too focused on what other people think and they stay in jobs that don't make them happy. They stay in professions that they don't find fulfilling. Or people spend a lot of time at work really waiting for someone better than them to come along and tell them what they should do. And I don't like any of that. So that's why I called it Nobody Cares About Your Career, because I really believe you are the person you've been waiting for. And if you can, focus yourself, if you can get over the things that you don't like about yourself and embrace the things you need to learn, you can have a really successful career.
Well, that's very perfect for this show because we talk a lot about being in the driver's seat of your career, being the proactive person. It's funny, in my book, I have a chapter called Become Your Own Career Coach. So we are cut from the
Yep.
same cloth with this in the
Yep.
sense of you have to be the person. And I think you're right. There are a lot of people who are sort of waiting, or they're following the path, because I can remember when I felt really lost in my career, thinking about becoming an occupational therapist, not because I was so passionate about it, but I wanted a path. I was like, cool, that's laid out. You do A and then B and then C. And when you're feeling lost, sometimes you're desperate for that path. In Give some advice to us for someone who's maybe lost in that career transition, has had a different career, maybe doesn't know what to do next. I mean, how do they become that person for themselves when they feel anything but that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel lost at work like 3 times a week. So like I think the first thing is it's very natural to feel overwhelmed. I think it's natural to feel lost. I think it's natural to feel anxious. I think feeling nervous about work can be a really good thing because it means you're trying. It means you're endeavoring to figure something out. I think if you're feeling lost in your career, I think the biggest question is to ask yourself, why are you feeling lost? What is making you feel lost? Are you really not lost at all, but you're just unhappy in where you are and what you're doing? Or are you at a fork in the road and you don't know whether to stay or to go or to make a change or to stay the same? Or is it that you want something that you don't currently have and you're not sure how to get it? And I write a lot about this in this book, and I've done a lot of this in my own career, which is I tend to find that when things are overwhelming or I feel uncertain, I try to really talk to myself about why the uncertainty, like what actually is this? And it usually isn't uncertainty. It's usually that I'm not lost. It's that I don't like something, or I'm feeling badly about something, or something isn't working for me. And then I find at work, and I've had a really awesome opportunity to work with a lot of different types of people and a lot of different types of roles, but the idea that you can make a list, right? You can start doing little things that help you get out of whatever predicament you're in. So if it's that you don't like your profession, okay, you can take a bunch of steps to find a new profession. If you don't like your manager, you're feeling unhealthy or unsafe in your current work situation, how do you get yourself out of that? Through a lot of little steps, which I think can help you feel more in control.
Yeah, I think it's a control issue 100%. Like, nailed it with that. Um, in your book, you talk about, you say that succeeding at work is based on five simple things. I want to know, what are these five simple things?
Oh
I'm
my
like,
gosh,
oh, they're not that
it's so funny you
simple.
ask me because I'm like, I don't have the book in front of me, and I'm like, like, I think the biggest things to succeeding at work, one is you have to care, right? And that sounds very trite, but I find it, I went to work this morning, we had a project go wrong, and I was like, God, did nobody care about this project? Like, so I think the sheer act of caring really, really matters. Other things that you need to do to be great at work is, one, you need to be willing to fail. You need to be willing to take on risk. You need to be able to take on projects that you don't think you're capable of. You need to be willing to put yourself in a new position, because by doing that, you expose yourself to so much more and you can do so much more. I think the third thing you need to do is to just do a great job. It's like, I'm a sports fan. I don't think you're a sports person, but like Bill Belichick, the former Patriots coach, would say, do your job. Just like, do your job. I was writing an email to my company today, and I was saying in it, at Notre Dame, did you ever see the movie Rudy?
Yes.
Okay. Do you remember? So Rudy plays for Notre Dame, and at the end of the tunnel that they run out of before the Notre Dame football team goes on the field, they all slap their hand on this sign that says "Play like a champion today." And you got to play like a champion at work, and you got to, whether that means treating your customer, finishing your TPS report, whatever it may be, whatever it is that was required of you, do it like a champion. So those aren't the five things. There's about 1,000 things in this book, but I really do think the biggest ones are caring, learning. Work is tuition you get paid for, and that's a big thesis of this book, which is, how amazing is it that you're getting paid to learn? And put yourself into it, put yourself in situations where you have to learn, do it consistently, do it with care, do it with a good work ethic, and you'll do all right.
I'm curious, what's your take on, and maybe this is less of a trend today, but like quiet quitting, right? So I feel like I am such a millennial. I came up in the era of like hustle, girl boss, work hard, hard, hard. Like we did everything, and we like it was fine if you didn't even want to pay us. We'd probably say thank you.
Yeah.
Like that kind of mentality. And then I feel like during COVID, there was obviously like a pendulum swing, and one of the other things was this era of like quiet quitting, about almost like um not going above and beyond.
Yeah.
And I feel like you have sort of a different take on that. And I've also heard you just talk. I like your unique take on like why quiet quitting is actually not great for you versus I think people think they're doing it and it's kind of like sticking it to the man or the company.
Totally.
Yeah, talk about that a little bit
Yeah.
because
I mean, I think I'm very outspoken on quiet quitting. I think quiet quitting is bullshit. And the reason I say that is, I think mailing it in and being like, ooh, I'm still getting paid and I'm only doing a third of the work, or I'm not going to do an ounce more than I get paid for. It can seem like you're getting a discount. It's like you're at the store and somebody put the wrong discount code on the item you want to buy and you're getting an extra discount. Like, yes, in the moment it can feel like that. But the reality is that if you don't do the ounce more and you are mailing it in, there is somebody else out there who is not doing that, who is hungrier than you, who is smarter than you, who has more ambition than you, who clearly cares more than you. And that person, it may not be right now, but that person is going to take your spot. And the danger of quiet quitting is the only person you're really quitting is yourself. And I'm not saying you have to be the last one there and turn out the lights and like it's Herculean work efforts. I'm not saying that at all. But I am saying that if your mission is really only to cheat your company, it's not going to end well. At some point somebody's going to discover that. At some point somebody is going to show up who is going to make you look bad because they don't believe in the same things. And then if you do by chance get away with that for a really long period of time, then you haven't developed that much. You haven't learned that much. You haven't pushed yourself to take on things that you didn't know how to do, which ultimately puts you at a disadvantage.
yeah, absolutely. I mean, I completely agree. I think also you have something in your book where you talk about like know what your company is paying you to do. And I think as a segue to this, how do you create value at work, right? Creating an impact at work. I think there are people, let's say you've decided you're not going to be a quiet quitter, but you're like, well, I don't want to just sort of like turn my wheels. I think part of the quiet quitting is also like, are you working on things that are impactful? Are you adding value to the organization? Do you understand how to connect those dots? Can you
Yeah.
talk about that a little bit? Because I do think there's also a movement of like getting over the busy work and people want to
Yeah.
feel like they're able to connect that. And to your point about being proactive in your career, probably no one's going to tell you where those
Yeah,
dots are connected. So
definitely.
how do you get that out of them?
Yeah, I think so one is I think you can see quiet quitting a mile away. So like the other thing I think the other place where people are a little bit delusional is that nobody sees you quiet quitting, like everybody sees you quiet quitting. The second piece, and I write about this in the book, is that the dumbest person at your company is the person at your company that doesn't understand what they're there to do, what they're being paid to do. And I say that kind of in cheek, and it's actually not a fair thing to say at all, because a lot of what happens at work is you just get inundated with a bunch of tasks and projects, to your point, that come from all angles. And then you get buried in those and you kind of like, you forgot what you were there to do in the first place, or really where the direction is coming from, or what you're supposed to accomplish. So, I think what's really important is one, to have a vision for yourself at work, which I write a lot about, which is you should want to get something out of this job. And that could be something deeply personal to you. It could be emotionally important. It could be financially important, but like, what is it that you want to get out of this job? The second thing is you should have a good idea of what your company wants you to get out of this job. And it's as dumb as it sounds, I think it's really important to write both down, because both of those things in an endless amount of Mondays and Wednesdays and Thursdays and Tuesdays, it can kind of get lost. And it's important to kind of zoom yourself out to say, how am I spending my time? Am I spending my time on things that are helping my vision? Am I spending my time on the things that are me delivering for my company's vision for my position? Or are you just spinning your wheels in the middle? And when you work at a big corporation, it's really, really easy to get caught into the vortex of spin, and it's super hard to pull yourself out of it unless you force yourself. So I'm a big proponent of like once a month, put 30 minutes or an hour and a half or however much time you can spare in your calendar and just be like, where am I on what I'm here to do for me and what I'm here to do for them?
Yeah, absolutely. I think whether that's networking because one of your priorities is like you want to build your own influence
Exactly.
at work, right? Okay. I was going to ask, like, what are some of the activities you think people should consciously be thoughtful of or doing at work to, I don't know, maybe they're not totally sure what the next door opportunity is coming their way, but they want to stay open to them. Like, what are some things you consciously try to do on a regular basis to kind of keep that career development going?
I try to one is I try to listen as much as I can. I am like a crazy I do talk a lot, I think, but I'm a very, very intent listener. I try to listen to everyone. I ask 1,000 questions. I think one thing at work is people don't want to look stupid, and so they don't ask questions. And I write a lot about this, which is asking questions is really, really important. I worked for a guy who worked for AT&T he was Southern and he would just pretend that he was dumb. He would just be like, I'm a dumb Southern gentleman. Now, the reality was he was the smartest guy in the room, and it was in part because he always asked questions. So one is just asking questions. Two is I think it's really unfortunate when people kind of get caught in the work cult where the marketers hang out with the marketers, the salespeople hang out with the salespeople, the engineers hang out with the engineers, finance people only talk to the finance people. Getting to know people who do things that are very, very different than you is a really good way to understand your business from a different vantage point. So for me, it was always a finance person. I always wanted to get really close to a finance person because that was the place I was the weakest. So I think, pairing yourself with someone who has a skill set you don't have so that you can understand, how they do what they do, why they do what they do, that will make you better at your job. Three is, just saying hi to people, introducing yourselves. I remember hiring a head of account management at Barstool Sports, and on her second day of work or third day of work, she was like, "Gosh, it like seems great here, but no one on my team has come up and introduced themselves to me." And I was like, "That's crazy!" Like, so I also think don't be intimidated if you really want to network and you want to meet the head of a division or the head of your department or whoever, go up and be like, "Hey, I'm Erika. Like, I'm a Scorpio. This is what I do here. It's great to meet you." So I think just taking the initiative to do things. And then I think the last thing is I really do believe feedback is a gift. I write about this a lot. And I think showing that you care and that you're interested can go a really long way. So, I'll give you an example. I sent out a company survey last week and I was asking about the things that hold our company back. And I said, please give me your top 10 things. 10 things holding our customers back, 10 things holding us back. And this guy named Jerome was like, hey, I didn't have time to finish the survey by the time it was done, but I just want to share with you my 2 cents on like the things I think that are holding us back. And Jerome works in the engineering department in a remote location. And I was like, God, I remember Jerome. I'm interested in his feedback and how awesome that he took it upon himself to offer it. So don't also be afraid to take a little initiative and show some opinion.
Yeah. I mean, I think too, at work, you're almost like, do I make the decision or who's the decision maker? It can't be me. Can I take initiative or do I need to ask for initiative? And I find that in a lot of places, it's better to move forward and kind of,
Definitely.
right? Maybe it depends on your culture too. I guess what would be your like final advice for people who are maybe saying like, I don't work at a company that supports this, or I'm misaligned with my boss. Like, I want to do some of these things you're saying. I want to take initiative. I want to create this impact, but I feel like I'm up against something. Like, how do you determine Is this fixable? Do you move on?
I think that's a tough I think that's a tough situation that everybody finds themselves in. So it's also a very common situation. The first thing I think that people lose sight of is y- you can't just come at things from your perspective. You can't be like, I want to do this. Me. I. This is putting your ego away. I think for people to test if they can do this, the first test is figuring out what you want to do and how do you make this seem like this is really in your boss's interest or really in the person making the decision's interest. I think sometimes if you phrase things, especially change, people don't like change. But if you phrase change as a progression and you phrase change as something not that is someone else's idea, but that would help that person meet their objectives, I think you will find that it goes a lot longer, a lot further. I write in the book about something called the 94%. And 94% of any reaction at work is based on how it affects the person. So you got to keep that in mind because whoever you're pitching to or whoever you want to make something happen with, 94% of what they're thinking is about how it affects them. So if you can parlay what you're doing to help them in their interest, you have the greatest chance of it getting done. And I think that's an important step. And then two is if you're in a place where there is no desire for change or your impact isn't valued, I think first you've got to ask why, and you have to ask them why. Like the feedback, I think sometimes we cower from feedback, but feedback is actually a gift. And those arrows that can feel like they'll hurt you are actually just going to go in your quiver. So first ask the question, and then two, if the answer is unsatisfactory, then at that point you got to move on. If you truly want to grow and change and accomplish these things, then you have to make the choice to move. If the answer isn't unsatisfactory and you're like, I could do a couple things different here to make this happen, then that's kind of your answer as well.
I love that. I mean, I think that the advice you're giving is also very holistic. You can take it wherever to whatever job you go to next. And I think when it comes to kind of career development and these skills, you take yourself wherever you go. So it's important to kind of be
Definitely.
able to address these things. Sorry, I lied before because this is truly my last final question. What is a weekly ritual or routine that you live by and helps you do your career better?
Ooh, okay. I have a bunch of them. One is the first thing I do every day is I have a long commute, so I get on the train every day. The first thing I do is to send 3 notes of like gratitude. I try to send 3 things that will make other people feel good. Not an ask for anything, not, can you do this and it can help me help you, like just like a hey, you did a great job, or hey, thank you so much, or hey, connecting you too because I think you would really benefit from knowing what is that kind of thing. So I do that every day. I really, really love doing that. The second is I say hi to absolutely everyone at work. Like there is not a human being who I can run into, whether it's the like cleaning lady or the guy in accounting or some big cheese. Like I say hi to everybody. Um, and then the third is I always ask how I can do better. And at the end of every day, I always do a quick like, what could I have done better today? What didn't I do great today? And I find it's like a good internal monologue with myself to just keep myself on my toes of like, ooh, yeah, you weren't great. This went okay, but you weren't great at that. And this is how you could do it better.
I love that. It's like a self-reflection almost.
Definitely. And
Yeah.
not like in a formal way. Like I'm on the train, like the guys next to me are drinking beers. I'm having like club soda and I'm like, what could I have done better today?
You don't want to have that conversation with those guys.
No, I definitely do not want to who also don't want to have that conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Erika, thank you so much. This is super helpful. Okay, obviously people can buy your book probably wherever books are sold,
Yeah.
but tell them also where they can find you because you actually give career advice on a regular basis. So tell us
Yes.
everything. We'll put it in the show notes.
I have a lot of career advice to give. Whether people want it is another story, but you can follow me at Erika. So I'm at Erika, Erika on Instagram. And I'm on all the other social platforms as Erika _. And I do a daily video series called One-on-Ones where we answer career questions. And you can always DM me on LinkedIn. I'm just at my name, or really on any social platform.
Amazing. I'll put all of that in the show notes so people can stalk you, get your one-on-one career advice. And
Great.
you guys will love this book. Nobody cares about your career. It's very much aligned with everything we talked about in this show. So Erika, thank you so much again.
Thank you so much. Thank you again.